When I saw the new lock on my own bedroom door, I knew something in my home had shifted. It was a small, silver lock, clean, new, and shiny, one I didn't remember buying. The kind of lock that gleamed in the afternoon light as if proud of its purpose. But what unsettled me most wasn't the lock itself, it was the fact that I couldn't open it. My key didn't fit anymore. For a moment, I just stood there in the hallway, frozen, holding a laundry basket against my hip. The smell of fabric softener and detergent filled the air, mingling with the faint scent of jasmine that drifted from the living room diffuser. My heart began to thump, not loud, but steady, like a warning knocking from deep inside my chest. Maybe it's jammed, I whispered to myself. But deep down, I already knew. Something was wrong. Something had been wrong for weeks, I just hadn't wanted to admit it. 3 months earlier, everything had been peaceful, predictable, normal. My name is Maria, and I've always taken pride in keeping a warm home, a place where people could breathe, talk, feel safe. I'm 45, married for nearly 20 years to Daniel, and together we've raised 2 kids, Eli, our son in college, and Grace, our teenage daughter who still lives with us. Our house wasn't big, but it was full of love. The kind that shows up in small ways, the smell of cinnamon on Sunday mornings, Daniel humming while fixing the gate, Grace leaving little drawings on the fridge. We had our share of disagreements, of course, but for the most part, we were happy. That's why, when Daniel told me his younger sister Lydia needed a place to stay for a few weeks, I didn't hesitate. She's been through a rough breakup, he said, running a hand through his hair. Just until she gets back on her feet. I'd always liked Lydia, or at least, I wanted to. She was younger than me by 10 years, energetic, stylish, sharp-tongued but charming when she wanted to be. The kind of woman who knew how to get attention without asking for it. Of course, I told him that night over dinner. She's family. Tell her she can stay in the guest room. I remember Daniel's smile, half relief, half gratitude. You're a saint, you know that? But I wasn't a saint. I was just someone who believed in helping family, maybe a little too much. Lydia arrived the following Friday evening. I can still see it clearly, the screech of her car tires on the driveway, the sound of her laughter spilling through the open door before she even stepped inside. She came with 2 enormous suitcases and a box labeled fragile in pink marker. Maria, she exclaimed, throwing her arms around me before I could even react. You have no idea how much this means to me. Her perfume hit me first, sweet, strong, floral. She pulled back, beaming. You look exactly the same. Domestic goddess, huh? I smiled politely. Come in. The guest room's all ready for you. Grace helped her carry in her things, and Daniel opened a bottle of wine. It felt nice, that first night. We sat around the table, eating my lasagna, listening to Lydia tell stories about her ex-boyfriend, the man who had, apparently, ruined her life. I remember thinking how fragile she looked when she laughed too hard, how her eyes flickered like candles about to burn out. I pitied her. Maybe that's why I missed the first few signs. At first, it was small things. The morning after she moved in, I noticed her slippers by the kitchen door, the same place I usually kept mine. Then, a few days later, she started making coffee before I came downstairs. She'd use my favorite mug, the one with the chip on the rim. When I mentioned it lightly, "Oh, I see you found my mug," she just smiled. It's so cute. Feels like it belongs to me already. I laughed it off. I told myself it was harmless. But over the next few weeks, Lydia's presence began to expand, quietly, like a shadow that didn't know its boundaries. Her clothes started appearing in the laundry mixed with ours. She began rearranging the living room decor, saying things like, "Oh, I thought it looked more balanced this way." Then, one evening, I came home from grocery shopping to find her sitting on my spot on the couch, Grace beside her, laughing at something on Lydia's phone. "You don't mind, right, Maria?" she asked sweetly. "We were just talking about makeup." Of course, I didn't mind. But I felt the strange ache of displacement, like I was slowly being edged out of my own life. One Saturday afternoon, I overheard Lydia talking on the phone. I was in the hallway, folding towels, when her voice drifted from the kitchen, low, hushed, but sharp. "I told you," she said. "I'm not going back there. This house is perfect for me. They owe me that much." Her words froze me in place. "Oh, her?" I didn't understand what she meant. Before I could think, she turned the corner and saw me standing there. For a split second, her smile faltered, but then she laughed, tucking her hair behind her ear. "Oh. I was just talking to a friend about my old landlord," she said breezily. "He was awful." I nodded, pretending to believe her. But something inside me stirred, a whisper of suspicion I couldn't quiet anymore. That night, I told Daniel. He sighed, rubbing his temples. "Maria, she's just adjusting. You know how she is, dramatic, emotional. Let's give her a bit more time." He meant well, but I could tell he didn't want to deal with it. Lydia had always been his weak spot. The little sister he'd practically raised after their parents died. So I stayed quiet. But silence has a way of breeding resentment. I began to notice more: my missing mail, the packages arriving in Lydia's name. Furniture slightly rearranged. Doors closed that were once open. And then, one quiet Tuesday afternoon, I found the new lock on our bedroom door. That was the moment something inside me snapped, not in anger, but in disbelief. Our bedroom had always been ours. Sacred. Private. And now, it was locked, from the inside. I stood there for a long moment, key useless in my hand, the faint sound of Lydia's laughter echoing from the kitchen downstairs. I didn't say anything that night. I simply climbed into bed beside Daniel, staring at the ceiling. The faint hum of the ceiling fan filled the silence. "Did you change the lock?" I finally asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He turned toward me, frowning. "What? No. Why would I?" I stared at him for a moment, studying his confusion. That's when I knew, Lydia had crossed a line. And I was going to find out why. The next morning, I waited until Daniel left for work and Grace headed off to school. Lydia was still asleep, or at least, pretending to be. Her bedroom door was closed, the faint hum of music seeping through. I stood in the hallway, staring again at that new silver lock on my bedroom door. The morning light made it gleam, almost mockingly. A quiet fury began to rise in me. I wasn't angry, exactly, it was something colder. That feeling you get when you realize someone has been treating your kindness like a weakness. I fetched the spare screwdriver from the kitchen drawer. My hands trembled slightly, not from fear but from restraint. With careful pressure, I turned the screws until the lock came loose. When the door finally opened, I half expected to find nothing. Maybe Lydia had just been organizing something, or Daniel had forgotten to tell me about a repair. But what I saw made my stomach twist. The room wasn't empty. There were boxes, 3 of them, stacked in the corner, labeled in Lydia's handwriting, "My room things." My closet doors were ajar, and several of Daniel's shirts were missing. Instead, I found women's clothes hanging neatly inside, floral dresses, a few blouses I'd never seen, a purse that wasn't mine resting on the top shelf. On the vanity, where my perfume bottles once sat, there was now Lydia's makeup bag, her brush, her jewelry tray. It was as if she'd started moving into my life. I took a step back, heart racing. The faint scent of her perfume, sweet, heady, filled the air, clinging to the curtains. "What are you doing, Lydia?" I whispered. My thoughts were spinning. I felt violated, confused, and, if I'm honest, a little foolish. I'd opened my home, my heart, and she had, what? Decided to take over? A floorboard creaked behind me. "Maria?" Her voice. Smooth. Controlled. I turned. Lydia stood in the doorway, dressed in a satin robe, a coffee cup in hand. Her expression was unreadable, somewhere between guilt and defiance. "Oh," she said lightly. "You weren't supposed to see this yet. What is all this?" I demanded. She shrugged. I was just organizing. Daniel said I could use some of the closet space while I sort my things. Daniel? My voice sharpened. He said that? Her smile flickered, but she recovered quickly. He mentioned it last week. Maybe you forgot. I didn't forget. Because it never happened. Take your things out of here, I said quietly. Now. She raised her eyebrows. Are you serious? Maria, it's just temporary. I said now. For a moment, we locked eyes, two women standing in the same house, but on opposite sides of something much bigger than a misunderstanding. Then, without another word, she brushed past me, muttering under her breath as she started gathering her things. I watched her, arms folded, heart pounding. There was a dangerous calm in her movements, a hint of something calculated. This wasn't over. That evening, Daniel came home to tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. He dropped his keys on the counter, glancing between me and Lydia, who sat on the couch scrolling through her phone as if nothing had happened. What's going on? He asked. I told him everything, the new lock, the boxes, the closet. My voice trembled, not from fear but frustration. Daniel's expression hardened. Lydia, tell me that's not true. She looked up, her face softening into a practiced innocence. I just needed a little extra space. You said it was fine. I said you could use the guest room closet, not our bedroom, he snapped. Her lip quivered. You know how cramped that room is. I thought it wouldn't matter. Maria's making it sound worse than it is. The way she said my name, Maria, dripped with something sharp, almost mocking. I bit my tongue. Daniel sighed. Lydia, this isn't acceptable. Move your things back tonight. She nodded slowly, but I could see the flicker of resentment in her eyes. That night, I heard her crying softly in her room. Or maybe she wanted me to hear. Either way, I didn't sleep. Over the next week, she changed tactics. Gone was the sweet, eager guest. Lydia became distant, quiet, but somehow still everywhere. If I entered a room, she'd leave, but not before leaving behind little traces, her mug on the counter, her scarf draped over a chair, her perfume in the air. Grace began spending more time in her room, saying Lydia made her uncomfortable. She watches me, my daughter whispered one night as I tucked her in. Like she's judging everything I say. I hugged her close. Don't worry, sweetheart. It's just temporary. But I didn't believe my own words anymore. The breaking point came 2 weeks later. Daniel was away on a short business trip, and it was just me, Grace, and Lydia at home. That Friday evening, I was cooking dinner, chicken stew, Lydia's supposed favorite, trying to keep the peace. Dinner's almost ready, I called out. No answer. I checked her room, empty. The guest bed was neatly made, her things gone. A wave of unease washed over me. Then I heard laughter from outside. Through the kitchen window, I saw Lydia in the backyard, standing by the patio with 2 of her friends. There were wine glasses, snacks, even fairy lights strung across the fence. My fence. They were laughing, drinking, playing music, like it was her housewarming party. I went outside, forcing calm. Lydia, what's going on? She turned, unfazed. Oh, Maria. You're home early. We're just having a little get-together. I gestured around. In my backyard? Without asking? One of her friends giggled. Lydia said this was her place. My stomach dropped. She said what? Lydia's smile didn't falter. Oh, come on, don't make this a thing. It's just easier to explain than saying I'm crashing with my brother's wife. Her friends exchanged glances. I felt my cheeks flush with a mix of anger and humiliation. Wrap this up, I said quietly. Now. Her eyes met mine, cold and unflinching. You really don't like sharing, do you, Maria? That was the first time I saw what she truly was, not broken, not lost, but entitled. Later that night, after her friends left, I went to check if everything was quiet. The house was dim, shadows stretching across the living room. Then I noticed something on the kitchen counter, a set of new keys, attached to a keychain I didn't recognize. When I picked them up, my stomach turned. They were labeled in her handwriting, "Main door, my copy." And that's when it hit me. Lydia wasn't just staying here. She was moving in. And if I didn't stop her soon, I might lose more than just my peace, I might lose my home entirely. That night, I sat alone in the living room long after everyone had gone to bed. The only sound was the faint hum of the refrigerator and the rhythmic ticking of the wall clock. The keys lay on the table in front of me, her copy of the main door key. I kept staring at them, trying to understand how I had missed so much. Every little thing from the past few weeks suddenly lined up like pieces of a puzzle: the locked door, the moved furniture, her clothes in my closet, the quiet phone call she took late at night, the way Daniel had started spending more time outside on the porch talking in hushed tones. Something ugly started to form in my chest. A suspicion I didn't want to name. So I did what I never thought I would, I checked her room. Her purse was sitting open on the nightstand. I knew it was wrong, but something in me, call it instinct, call it survival, said I had to look. Inside were receipts, some from home decor stores, all with my address listed for delivery. And then, tucked between them, a photo, a printed picture of Daniel and Lydia. Not an old family photo. A new one. Taken in our backyard. They were standing close. Too close. Her hand was resting on his chest. My hands began to shake so hard that I nearly dropped it. I felt sick. I needed air. I stepped out onto the porch, the night cold against my skin. My mind was a storm, disbelief, anger, heartbreak, all crashing together until I couldn't tell which hurt more. And then, as if the universe wanted to twist the knife, I heard Daniel's car pull into the driveway. He wasn't supposed to be back until morning. He got out quietly, phone in hand, whispering to someone. "Yeah. I'll handle it tomorrow," he said. "Just act normal for now. Please, Lydia." My blood ran cold. He froze when he saw me standing there. "Maria," he said, startled. "You're still up?" I didn't answer. I just looked at him, really looked. The guilt was written all over his face. "Who were you talking to?" I asked. He hesitated. "Just a client." "Say her name," I said quietly. He frowned. "What?" "Say her name." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The silence between us was deafening. Then he sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "Maria, it's not what you think." "Then tell me what it is," I whispered. He sat down on the porch step, looking suddenly small, almost ashamed. "She's been going through a lot. I just wanted to help her." Maybe I let the lines blur a little, but nothing. "Blur?" I interrupted, my voice breaking. "She's living in our house, Daniel. She has a key to our home. She's moving her things into our room." "What exactly did you think she was doing?" He looked down, unable to meet my eyes. "I didn't want to hurt you. She just needed comfort." You comforted your sister-in-law?" I spat. He winced. "She's not really my sister-in-law anymore, not after her divorce. She was just lonely, Maria." I felt like the ground beneath me had vanished. "And I wasn't? You didn't see me? Your wife. The woman who stood by you through everything?" He reached out, but I stepped back. "Don't," I said. "Just don't." When I walked inside, Lydia was already standing by the stairs, wearing that same silk robe, watching us through the railing. Her expression wasn't surprise, it was satisfaction. "I told you this would come out sooner or later," she said softly. "Shut up," Daniel snapped. But she didn't. She stepped down slowly, her voice calm, almost soothing. "Maria, I didn't mean for you to find out this way. Daniel and we just connected. We didn't plan it. Her words hit me like physical blows. I turned to Daniel. Tell me she's lying. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. That silence told me everything. My knees nearly gave out, but I forced myself to stand tall. He tried to reason with me for a few minutes, but I didn't hear a word. I went upstairs, locked myself in my daughter's room, and sat on the floor until the sun came up. When I finally came down, the house was quiet. Their rooms were empty. A few of Daniel's things were gone. So were Lydia's boxes. The only thing left was a note on the kitchen counter. I'm sorry, Maria. I never meant to hurt you. I just couldn't keep pretending anymore. Daniel. Underneath it, written in a different, neater handwriting. Don't worry, I'll take care of him now. You can finally rest. Lydia. I crumpled the paper in my hand and threw it into the sink. My tears burned hot, but behind them was something else, determination. Because they thought they'd won. But they didn't know me. They didn't know what a woman can do when everything she's built is ripped away from her. A week passed. I told Grace that her father had gone away for a while. I didn't have the heart to tell her the truth yet. But I did my research. I found where they were staying, a small apartment 2 towns over. I didn't go there. I didn't need to. Instead, I started working on something quieter. Smarter. Every bank account, every bill, every insurance policy, all of it was still under my name. Daniel never changed it. He thought he had time. He didn't. I closed our joint account, transferred the savings, and filed for divorce that same week. When the papers reached him, I got a text. Why are you doing this, Maria? We can still fix things. I stared at the screen for a long moment, then typed back. You already did the fixing, with Lydia. 2 months later, I heard from a mutual friend that things between them had fallen apart. Lydia had drained his account, sold his car, and vanished. Just like that. And Daniel? He was left broke, alone, and begging for forgiveness. He showed up at my doorstep one evening, thinner, desperate. That night, I told Daniel. He sighed, rubbing his temples. Maria, she's just adjusting. You know how she is, dramatic, emotional. Let's give her a bit more time. He meant well, but I could tell he didn't want to deal with it. Lydia had always been his weak spot. The little sister he'd practically raised after their parents died. So I stayed quiet. But silence has a way of breeding resentment. I began to notice more, my missing mail, the packages arriving in Lydia's name. Furniture slightly rearranged. Doors closed that were once open. And then, one quiet Tuesday afternoon, I found the new lock on our bedroom door. That was the moment something inside me snapped, not in anger, but in disbelief. Our bedroom had always been ours. Sacred. Private. And now, it was locked, from the inside. I stood there for a long moment, key useless in my hand, the faint sound of Lydia's laughter echoing from the kitchen downstairs. I didn't say anything that night. I simply climbed into bed beside Daniel, staring at the ceiling. The faint hum of the ceiling fan filled the silence. Did you change the lock? I finally asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He turned toward me, frowning. What? No. Why would I? I stared at him for a moment, studying his confusion. That's when I knew, Lydia had crossed a line. And I was going to find out why. I laughed when I read it. Not out of amusement, but realization. She still thought she was the victim. So I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because what she didn't know was that I had already found my peace, and nothing she said could touch it. But fate has a strange way of giving you the last word when you least expect it. It happened 3 months later. A new family had moved into the house next door, a couple around my age, with 2 little boys who loved to ride their bikes across the driveway. One evening, as I was watering the roses, the husband waved at me. You must be Maria, he said. We've heard a lot about you from the realtor. You used to live here with your husband, right? I nodded. Yes, that's right. He chuckled. Funny thing, our realtor said there was a woman who tried to buy this house a few months ago, said it was her rightful home. She caused quite a scene when she didn't get it. My heart skipped. Did she give her name? He thought for a moment. Lydia. Pretty, sharp tongue, seemed unstable. I smiled faintly. Yes. That sounds about right. He shook his head. She told the agent you stole the property from her. Crazy, huh? I smiled wider. Crazy, I agreed, handing him a rose from the bush. But I suppose we all tell stories to survive. Later that night, I sat by the window, watching the streetlights glow against the dusk. There was a time I would have felt fear at hearing Lydia's name. Now? I felt pity. She'd spent her life trying to possess things that could never truly belong to her: people, houses, love. And I had finally understood the difference between having something and belonging somewhere. That house, the one I once thought she had taken from me, was never really just walls and floors. It was where my kindness had lived, where my heart had trusted. And though those parts had been wounded, they weren't gone. They had just grown stronger, wiser. One Saturday morning, Grace and I visited my sister, Sophia. She ran a small bakery downtown, and she'd been begging me to stop by. When I walked in, the smell of cinnamon and vanilla wrapped around me like an old memory. Sophia looked up, surprised. Maria. You finally made it. I hugged her tightly. It felt good, grounding, real. Over coffee, I told her everything. The affair, the letters, the slow healing. She listened quietly, the way sisters do when words are too heavy for advice. When I finished, she squeezed my hand. You know, Mom used to say kindness is a strength, but it's not a door for anyone to walk through. You just learned where to build your walls. Her words sat deep in me, like a seed finding soil. That night, I wrote them down in my journal. Kindness needs boundaries. Otherwise, it becomes self-destruction. A few weeks later, I got another unexpected message, this time from Daniel. It was short. I've been sober for 2 months. I got a job. I want to be a better father. Could I see Grace sometime? I sat with that message for hours. The old pain whispered to me, don't trust him. But the newer, stronger part of me said, healing means not carrying his shame forever. So I replied. You can see her, Daniel. But in a public place, and only if you stay consistent. He agreed immediately. The first meeting was awkward. Grace hugged him shyly. He looked older, worn out, but there was sincerity in his eyes. When we parted, he turned to me and said, Thank you, Maria. For still letting me be a father. I smiled faintly. I'm not doing it for you, Daniel. I'm doing it for her. That was the first and last time I saw Lydia. It was at the mall, a few weeks later. She was sitting at a cafe, alone, sunglasses on, staring into her phone. Her hair had lost its shine. Her clothes were still expensive, but her posture, her spirit, looked tired. She noticed me before I could turn away. For a second, I saw something flicker in her eyes, guilt, envy, maybe even regret. She gave me a small, tight smile. I returned it, calm and polite. Then I walked away. No confrontation, no drama. Just silence. Because the real revenge wasn't destroying her, it was living without her shadow. A year later, my life felt new. Not perfect, but honest. Grace and I had built new traditions, movie nights on Fridays, Sunday pancakes with extra syrup, singing along to old songs in the car. Sometimes, I'd catch myself standing by the window, watching her play in the yard, and I'd think of everything that had happened, how easily love can blind us, how pain can sharpen us. And how sometimes, the people we save are the ones who end up teaching us the hardest lessons. Life has a quiet way of bringing balance, not through grand gestures, but through small moments of truth. Months passed peacefully after that last encounter. Lydia had vanished from our lives, Daniel was slowly rebuilding his. Grace and I had found a rhythm, simple, steady, real. But the world has a memory, even when people don't. It was a warm Thursday afternoon when my phone buzzed with a message from Sophia. "Maria, turn on channel 7. You need to see this." I grabbed the remote, half curious, half anxious. The news headline flashed. "Local real estate agent charged with fraud and property misrepresentation." There she was, Lydia, on the screen, her face pale under harsh lighting, escorted by 2 officers through a courthouse hallway. The reporter's voice echoed. "Lydia Moreno, a prominent property agent, has been accused of falsifying ownership documents and attempting to resell homes under false identities." Froze. The words blurred for a second. Grace was doing homework at the table, her pencil tapping lightly. She glanced up. "Mom, what's wrong?" I took a breath and smiled softly. "Nothing, sweetheart. Just, someone I used to know." I turned off the TV and sat still, letting it sink in. Part of me felt sorry, not because Lydia was caught, but because I'd once believed she could change. But as strange as it sounds, I didn't feel triumph. Only closure. She'd built her life on manipulation, and eventually, it folded in on itself. It was the same house she'd tried to claim, only this time, she couldn't control the walls. Later that week, I went to the local cafe, the same one where I'd once seen her sitting alone. The owner, a kind woman named Ruth, smiled as I ordered my usual latte. "You heard about that Moreno woman, huh?" she said, shaking her head. "Always thought she was too good to be true. Guess karma keeps good records." I smiled faintly. "Yes, it does." Ruth leaned closer. "You used to know her, didn't you?" "I did," I said quietly. "She taught me a lot about trust." Ruth nodded knowingly. "Pain's a cruel teacher, but an honest one." That night, as I tucked Grace into bed, she asked something that stopped me cold. "Mom, why do bad people always get caught?" I hesitated, sitting beside her. "Because sooner or later, the truth gets tired of hiding." She frowned, processing that. "Even if no one tells?" I smiled. "Especially then." She smiled too, sleepily. "Then you're really brave, Mom." Her words lingered long after she drifted off to sleep. Brave. I'd never thought of myself that way. For so long, I'd seen myself as the one who lost my trust, my marriage, my home. But now, sitting in that soft lamp glow, watching my daughter breathe peacefully, I realized I hadn't lost. I'd survived. And survival, when done with grace, is bravery. Weeks later, I received a letter in the mail. The handwriting was unfamiliar. Inside was a note from Daniel's mother, a woman I hadn't spoken to since everything happened. "Dear Maria, I wanted to thank you for allowing Daniel to be part of Grace's life again. He told me you forgave him, in your way. Lydia came by our house once, before the arrest. She was angry, saying you ruined her. I told her the truth, she ruined herself. I hope you're finally at peace. You always deserved more than the pain you were given." I read that letter 3 times. Each time, it felt lighter, like a door creaking open somewhere inside me. Forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting. It means no longer letting someone's shadow control your light. And I was finally free. About a year after Lydia's arrest, Daniel showed up one Sunday morning with Grace's favorite flowers, sunflowers. He looked healthier, steadier. "I'm moving to a new apartment," he said. "Closer to Grace's school." I thought, maybe it'd be good for her. I nodded. "That's a good idea." He paused. "You really rebuilt everything, Maria. The house, your work, Grace. You didn't let any of this destroy you." I smiled. "That's because I learned something important." He tilted his head. "What's that?" That when someone tries to take your home, you don't fight them for the walls. You build a new foundation. He exhaled, half smile, half regret. You always were stronger than me. I looked at him for a long moment. No, Daniel. I just finally believed I could be. That evening, after he left, I took a slow walk around the neighborhood. The air smelled like jasmine, the sky deep orange fading into blue. Every sound, a dog barking, kids laughing, the hum of sprinklers, felt alive. For the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I wasn't afraid of who might walk through my door. Because that door now belonged to me. Months later, I received one final piece of news: Lydia had taken a plea deal. Probation and fines, no jail time. Part of me was relieved. I didn't wish her harm. Only distance. And that night, I wrote my final journal entry about her. She came into my home like a storm, took what she could, and left wreckage. But storms don't last. And the sun doesn't ask permission to rise again. A few Sundays later, I hosted a small brunch at our house. Sophia came, with her kids. Even Daniel stopped by for an hour. The house was filled with laughter, real, unforced, human. As I stood by the window, watching everyone talk and eat, I realized something simple yet profound. That the home I lost was never about bricks. It was about trust, love, and warmth. And now, it was stronger than ever. When everyone left, Grace helped me wash dishes. She handed me a plate and said softly, "I like our new house better. It feels like us." I smiled. "That's because it is us, sweetheart. Every bit of it." She nodded, grinning, and ran off to get her homework. I stayed there for a moment, hands in warm soapy water, sunlight streaming through the window, and whispered to myself. I welcomed her into my home, and she tried to take it from me. But what she didn't know is, you can't steal peace from someone who's already found it. Sometimes, I still think about Lydia. Not with anger, not even bitterness. Just a quiet curiosity about how someone could confuse taking with belonging. She came into my life at a time when I believed kindness could fix everything. And maybe that was my flaw, thinking love alone could save someone who didn't want to be saved. But if life has taught me anything, it's this. Boundaries are not walls. They are doors that you choose when to open, and who to let in. I used to think being a good person meant never saying no. That helping meant giving, even when it hurt. But now, I know that true kindness has limits, not because it's weak, but because it's wise. And maybe you've had someone like Lydia in your life. A friend, a family member, someone who smiled while slowly taking more than you could give. Maybe you, too, kept hoping they would change. Maybe you mistook silence for peace. If so, I want you to hear this from me. You are not unkind for setting boundaries. You are not cruel for walking away. And you are not selfish for choosing your peace. People will try to take from your home, your heart, your spirit. But they can only take what you hand them. Now, when I walk through my new house, my real home, I touch the walls and remember. Kindness can open doors, but wisdom keeps them safe. Sometimes, letting go isn't punishment. It's protection. For yourself, and for the ones who depend on your strength. So tonight, if you're listening to this, ask yourself. Have you ever let someone move into your life who didn't deserve a room there? And if so, is it time to change the locks? Tell me what you think, my friends. Would you have done what I did? Or would you have let her stay, hoping love could heal what betrayal broke? I'll be reading the comments, as always. And if this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe and share it with someone who might need to hear. Kindness is beautiful, but peace is sacred.